explosive went off. And she was gracious enough to be interviewed in the documentary, and we're really grateful to have her here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where do you guys want to start? I mean, this is an important final interview. How about why were you in the film? Why do you think the film Inobilize is important? And then briefly recapping the basics of what you witnessed.
Well, I think I should start 2 weeks prior to the bombing, because I had gone down to the snack bar in the building, and I had gone in for coffee and sitting there, and then in one of the booths, and then across from me in another booth were 2 ladies that were sitting there drinking coffee. And one of the ladies was telling her friend that she would talk to someone in the with the FBI office at 50 Penn Place, that they had gotten that their friend told her that they had received a fax saying that there was going to be a bombing of a federal building in Oklahoma City. And she took that and gave that to her boss. And he said, yes, that they were aware and not to worry about it. And I'm listening to this conversation, and I'm saying, God, you know, surely they wouldn't bomb 50 Penn Place. That's a public, you know, it's not a government building. But I was concerned at the time about it. So I went home and I told my husband about it. And I said, you know, I can't believe that, you know, that they're not terribly concerned over this. And they said for her not to worry about it, they'd take care of it. They were aware of it. I didn't think any more about that. And then the Friday before the bombing, when I drove to work, I had a reserved parking space, which was on the first level down, where you could get out and go directly into the elevators and then go up to the floors, to the ground floor or onto your offices. And when I arrived there, I saw 3 men who were standing there. They were behind a station wagon. It reminded me of the Ford station wagon, the large one that used to have the wood on it. And I thought, they're parked in a reserved parking space. And as I recall, the car was, the station wagon was kind of a light green color, and it was really dirty all over. You couldn't see the plates good, everything, because there was just real dirt all over it. And again, that struck me as odd, but the men were standing there, and one of the gentlemen had a large, looked like plans of the building, and he was pointing in the direction of the northeast and the southeast of the building. And there was another gentleman standing there with him. Both of those men were dressed in jeans, short sleeve shirts. They were about, I would say, probably 5'9", 5'10". They were very muscular, obviously very good athletes. They may have been, someone said to me, what did you think they were? And I said, if I were going to give, I would say military, a surveyor. Those were the things that, if I were having to describe them, I really thought for a minute that maybe they were there because of, we had had some gas odors previously, and then telephone problems, which, you know, they've had people come in and deal with. And so, but I was watching them. And then there was a man there, the other gentleman beside him, who was taking directions from the man who seemed to be in charge. And he was the one with the plans. And he had a paper sack, and he had some wiring, which looked like telephone wiring. And that was another reason that I thought perhaps that they were with the telephone company. And I went, I just kind of watched them as I was standing there and moving slowly forward. And there was another gentleman there, and he had on black pants, black cowboy boots, black hat, I can remember. And he had the band on his cowboy hat had silver metallic round places on it. And as he was watching me, he was very good looking. His hair came down to his collar, and very dark hair, very straight eyebrows. As I said, very nice looking. And the gentleman who had I was watching, he had a bar of what I would call, I wasn't sure what it was. It looked like putty. And the gentleman who looked to be in charge told him, put that back. And he put that, and he put the wiring back into the paper sack. Then he closed that, and then he went over to the door behind the driver's seat and put that inside there, and then came back to stand. And at that point, the gentleman who I had seen there that was standing there, who I later identified as Andrew Strassmauer, he walked over to the north side of the wall and had a cigarette over there. And then he came back. But all three of them then at that time were watching me. And I thought, well, I'll say something later to GSA. And then because I had a meeting that morning and I had a class to go to. So I went on in the building and I really got busy. I didn't think any more about it at the time. And I went on up to my office and just didn't think about, about that issue on that Friday.
Let me interject a question here, Jane, just to condense and recap this bombshell information that's a lot of it been corroborated by others over time and all these connections. A couple of weeks before, you hear women saying, yeah, the FBI says there's going to be a federal building get bombed. And that's later come out in court documents that they had, quote, had the threats. As the system, those that actually carried out the false flag were, beginning to create that false history. Then, before the bombing, you see these individuals, and I guess woman's intuition, you can see guys with a purpose. I mean, these are bombers. What was it about them that made you stop and pay attention? Was it just woman's intuition? I mean, I'm just trying to guess, why were you paying attention to these people? It's kind of a side issue, but since I brought it up, what was your exact position there at HUD?
At that point, I was a multifamily specialist and dealing with apartment complexes, anything having to do with multifamily housing. And I was also, at that time, head of the homeless program. And I was the regional vice president of AFGE.
Sure, because that information's important background. And again, what floor were you on?
Actually, I was on the 7th floor. That's where my union office was, and that's also where my office space was for my job.
Okay, so give us the dates. It was a few weeks before that you heard the woman talking about the FBI says a federal building's going to be bombed in Oklahoma City. What was the date again that you saw?
That was 2 weeks before the bomb. That was 2 weeks before the bombing.
Yes. So a few weeks before you heard the woman say that.
Yes.
But what was the date of?
The Friday before the bombing, the Friday before the 19th. That's when I drove in and I saw these men. The reason I was curious about them was that the parking spot in which they were in is a reserved parking spot. And I knew the cars that normally parked there, and that was not one of them. And since they were behind that car, I wondered why they were there. And then I was curious because they were talking, they had that sack, they had the plans, they were looking. I even contemplated at one point, maybe thinking about just going over and said, can I help you? And I thought, no, I'm late, I'm running behind, and I need to get upstairs. And then, you get that feeling when they don't want to talk to you, you don't want to figure you better go on and just mind your own business. And
one of the major significant points of this is that she later identified one of those people in the basement as Andreas Strassmauer. Andreas Strassmauer is actually, he's a suspected government informant because he was working with the Texas Light Infantry and militia, and they saw him going into a federal building in Texas using a key code. He later comes to Oklahoma City and starts working out of Elohim City. We know that there were many Southern Poverty Law Center agents working there, many informants. The founder of the city itself was actually an informant. Now, Carol Howe, ATF informant, actually said that Andrea Strassmeyer was one of the people that were going into Oklahoma City prior to the bombing, scouting locations, almost to the extent where she told her friends not to go to any federal buildings in April.
And to just briefly expand on that, because there's so much evidence, it's not a lack of evidence, it's too much evidence. It later came out in memos via lawsuits, thanks to Jesse Trentadue and other lawyers, that the Southern Poverty Law Center had informants at the very top of Elohim City, this white supremacist command center. You've got Strassmeyer, who's the son of a prominent German who's over here, and we know how our government likes to use Germans for dirty work. And it just goes on and on and on from there.
Yeah, we actually interviewed someone from Elohim City for the documentary, Josiah Stone. He identifies McVeigh being there at the compound at the same time that Strassmeyer was basically head of security.
And then we have people like Hal Turner, who I said for 10 years was a Fed, admitted now Fed, white supremacist leader. We have the white supremacist caught being led by the FBI in Orlando. That's Orlando Sentinel. I mean, it's not that the FBI is infiltrating these white supremacists. They're running them.
Yes. Yes, and Andrea Strassmeyer, after the bombing, was whisked out of the country through Mexico via his attorney, Kirk Lyons, and the FBI called him on the telephone and asked him if he was involved. That was the extent of their interview with him. The vehicle that you're describing in the basement actually matches a description of the vehicle that Andrea Strassmeyer was driving, where he'd actually been pulled over, and then they get a call to say, let him go.
Yes, that's correct. And they were told not to search his luggage, to let him go through, do not detain him for any purposes. And it was interesting, too, that Andrew Strassmeyer's father was a good friend of the president's. And so they had a lot of strings that they could pull and attach to get him out of this country. And but there were more people involved, and I tried, V.Z. Lawton and I tried desperately to get a stay of execution because we wanted McVeigh as a witness, and they would not, the court overruled that and said they would not allow that, and they went ahead with that execution. I really believe, I had seen him several times in the elevator. He was always dressed in his camouflage pants and top. He'd get off on the floor where the military was based and go in and see them, recruiters and all. He never spoke to anyone. He always was very solemn as, he looked around. And in fact, I kind of laughed because everybody always says hello to everybody. And I said, if he's new here in this building, I said, he's not going to fit in too well with the rest of the people.
Incredible. We can get caught in all the different, it's not even minutia, but all the parts of this. Jane Graham, you're here speaking out for the upteenth time today. Why should people be concerned? And then before we went on air, you were saying that, basically, this is one of your last interviews. It's time for the population to get involved. In your own words, what do you want to say to the millions of people that are watching this and listening to it?
The main thing I'd like to tell everybody is pay attention. Do not believe that the government is your friend. What they are doing and what I feel and I honestly believe, if you research it, you will find that I am right. And that is every time they try to get a law passed through Congress, which takes away some of your rights, they institute some action, some creation, some diversion that is significant enough to get the legislation through. At that time, you looked at the Patriot Act. They were really trying to get through gun control. They are altering the way that you are being allowed to pick and choose what you feel is the best thing for your own life, your individual rights.